Since the initial release of Star Wars in 1977, thematically the movies have been black and white. Good versus evil, Jedi versus Sith, original trilogy fans versus prequel trilogy fans. There's no denying who the good guys and bad guys are. Most characters fall on either side of the Force spectrum, but some of the characters have operated in that gray area between the light and the dark. The character arcs of Anakin Skywalker and Kylo Ren deal with their internal struggle with the light and dark sides of the Force. Qui-Gon Jinn was known as a Jedi maverick who placed his trust in the living Force rather than the Jedi Order and the Jedi Code. Master Jedi Mace Windu was known to channel both the light and dark sides of the Force, hence the purple lightsaber. Actually, no, that's a lie. Samuel L. Jackson just wanted a purple lightsaber. What we've learned from the first official teaser of The Last Jedi is that this is going to be the first Star Wars film that delves into that gray area between the light and the dark. It's a refreshing change from previous Star Wars films thematically. Rogue One did deal with that gray area of fighting a war between the Empire and the Rebellion, but this is concerning the Jedi and the Jedi philosophy. The Star Wars sequel trilogy has been unofficially referred to as the Gray Trilogy. This aforementioned quote is from Alan Dean Foster's novelization of The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens introduced us to a new cast of one-syllable named characters like Poe Dameron, Finn, not a Jedi, thought he was a Jedi, and Rey Skywalker, or Kenobi, or Jinn, or Palpatine, Windu, Urso, Solo, Targaryen. We know in Episode 8 that Luke Skywalker is going to train Rey, but what is Luke training Rey to become? Will she be the last Jedi? Will she turn to the dark side like Kylo Ren and Anakin Skywalker before her? Or will she be somewhere in the middle, a Gray Jedi that transcends the Jedi philosophy? One of the biggest criticisms, or probably the biggest, was Rey's ability to control the Force, and her ability to defeat Kylo Ren in single combat. Why the hell was she so powerful without any training? Well, that's a discussion for another day. I'm not trying to start a civil war here, but some of her feats can be attributed to what we call the living Force. We as in Jedi, and yes, I am a Jedi. Okay, go check the tape. Now, let's take a look back at Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, one of the most underrated Star Wars films. By the end of Revenge of the Sith, Yoda is starting to believe that the Jedi became too dogmatic. Little too late, don't you think? And that's what ultimately led to their destruction. In the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, Yoda and Obi-Wan are discussing what to do with Anakin and Padme's twins, Luke and Leia. Obi-Wan suggests that he takes Luke to Tatooine and train him to become a Jedi, and that Yoda should take Leia to Dagobah and train her as well, train them as Anakin should have been trained. Yoda disagrees and says that Jedi training is not the sole source of self-discipline, and that the living Force will guide them until they are ready to be taught. Qui-Gon Jinn was a prominent believer in the living Force. He believed that the will of the Force transcended the Jedi Order and the Jedi Code. The will of the Force isn't good or evil, it just is. On the other hand, the Jedi follow a very strict code. They are forbidden from forming attachments and individual bonds. They are told that peace is stronger than emotion. They only use their powers for defense, never attack, and they never seek revenge. They are taught to bury their feelings and let go of everything they fear to lose. And that's why the decision to train Anakin Skywalker was their biggest mistake. Qui-Gon Jinn truly believed that Anakin was the Jedi that was prophesized to bring balance to the Force, but many Jedi were reluctant to train him, most notably Yoda and Mace Windu. They decided to train Anakin even though they sensed a great amount of fear inside of him, and instead of helping him understand and control these dark emotions, they told him to bury them. His fear and anger were repressed. After the death of his mother, Anakin became confused by the concept of death. He felt personally responsible for her fate, and saving the life of his wife Padme became his personal obsession.
It was a dream.
Bad?
Like the ones I used to have about my mother, just before she died. And it was about you.
In Episode 3, Anakin tells Yoda that he is having visions of the future, and in these visions he foresees the death of someone he cares about. Instead of helping him understand these visions and emotions, Yoda tells him to let go of everything he fears to lose.
Careful you must be when sensing the future, Anakin. The fear of loss is a path to the dark side.
By then it was too late. Anakin became consumed by his fear of death.
Just help me save Padme's life. I can't live without her.
The arrogance of the Jedi was their biggest downfall. Instead of helping Anakin confront these emotions, fear, hatred, jealousy, anger, they pretended that they didn't exist. That a traumatized former slave from Tatooine who witnessed the death and suffering of his own mother could simply bury these emotions and become a righteous Jedi. They ignored the power of the dark side. They just pretended that it didn't exist, which allowed Palpatine to freely manipulate the repressed fear and anger of Anakin Skywalker. Palpatine destroyed the Jedi Order, and darkness consumed the entire Republic.
It's treason, then.
Fast forward 24 years later, Darth Vader basically fulfills that prophecy. You know, kinda. I mean, it only took him 30 years of killing and murdering to see the error in his ways. He kills the Emperor and finally brings balance to the Force. Darth Vader successfully returned to the light with the help of a new type of Jedi, his son, Luke Skywalker. What's very interesting about The Empire Strikes Back is the difference in training of the Jedi, comparing Luke's training to the training of his father. Before Luke was able to convince his father to come back to the light, he travels to Dagobah to train with Yoda, who takes a slightly different approach while training Luke. The Jedi Code has been altered. Of course, Yoda maintains that Luke must be free of the emotions that lead down the path of darkness, but he doesn't have Luke repress these emotions. Instead, he allows him to feel these emotions, embrace them, and thus understand them. This scene right here is probably the most pivotal moment of Luke's training. Yoda tasks Luke to go inside of the dark side cave, and Luke asks him what's inside of the cave. Yoda responds, "Only what you take with you." Luke is then confronted of a vision where he kills Darth Vader and finds his own face under the mask. Of course, this was foreshadowing that Luke was Darth Vader's son, but it's also Luke's biggest fear, falling to the dark side and becoming Darth Vader, using his power for evil. Luke's hatred and fear of becoming his father, becoming Darth Vader, going down that path of no return, allows him to defeat Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi. Look at the rage, the anger while Luke strikes down his father, dismembering him, and finally defeating the face of the Empire. But even with that anger and fear flowing through him, he rejects the Emperor. Luke was using these emotions to make him stronger, but he never answers the call to the dark side.
Fulfill your destiny and take your father's place at my side.
Never. I'll never turn to the dark side.
This is the key difference between the training of Luke Skywalker and Anakin Skywalker. Luke was able to walk that line between the light and the dark without fully committing to either side. Luke is definitely a good guy in this story. He fights on the side of the angels, but his training with Yoda allowed him to understand his enemy, and that understanding of the dark side was never afforded to his father. Fast forward 2 decades, and the Force once again is unbalanced. It always seems like the Force needs balancing. What the hell? The Jedi, the Sith, Anakin fucking it up. Jesus. Before Force Awakens, we find out that Luke was training a new generation of Jedi, which included his nephew Ben Solo, otherwise known as Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren struggled with the pull to the dark side since he was a boy, and while we don't know why he was turned to the dark side, there are some clues scattered throughout The Force Awakens and Star Wars canon novels. Kylo Ren eventually betrays Luke and slaughters all of his young Jedi in training. Luke blames himself and goes into exile on Ahch-To, where he finds the first Jedi Temple. And this is where we will find Rey and Luke at the beginning of The Last Jedi. When you look at the arcs of Luke and Rey in A New Hope and The Force Awakens, basically their origin stories, they are very similar. Both grew up on desolate desert planets. They were thrown into the fight between the light and the dark against their wills. Luke was able to blow up the Death Star with a 1 in a million shot, and Rey successfully defeated Kylo Ren in single combat without any training. Feats that were considered to be nearly impossible. Of course, they did have help from their friends. Han Solo saves Luke from his imminent death by shooting down Darth Vader's TIE fighter. Chewbacca left Kylo Ren literally bleeding from his kidney, and Finn was able to stave him off when Rey was knocked unconscious. The similarities in these arcs can be considered lazy writing, or it could be the will of the living Force. guiding Luke and Rey to their respective destinies, introducing them to allies and friends, and helping them understand the role that they will play in the struggle between the light and the dark. You ever think of that? Yoda puts his trust in the living force when he decided to send Luke to Tatooine, where he was able to develop unexplainable skills without Jedi training. His father Anakin also experiences this unexplainable phenomenon as a kid on Tatooine. He was the only human to ever survive a pod racing match. But, he was then sent to Jedi Hogwarts, where there are no emotions or questions allowed. God forbid a Jedi ever asks the question why.
We will not go through this exercise again, Anakin. And you will pay attention to my lead.
Why? What?
But tell me why I can't.
No, there is no why. Nothing more will I teach you today.
Now, Rey's circumstance was a bit more extreme than Luke's and Anakin's. Luke had a life and parental guidance. Anakin had his mother. Rey has no one. Like Anakin and Luke, she has spent most of her life on a deserted desert planet where her only instinct was survival. So you have 3 Force-sensitive kids who weren't plucked out of their homes by the Jedi Order when they were children and sent to Jedi boarding school. They were allowed to grow and learn and form an identity with the Force. In the case of Anakin, the worst thing that ever happened to that kid was winning that pod race and being trained as a Jedi. Now, in the Last Jedi trailer, we can assume Luke is talking to Rey when he says, "Breathe, just breathe, now reach out, what do you see?" Rey responds that she sees light, darkness, and a balance. In this trailer alone, we can see the difference in Luke and Yoda's training methods. He is encouraging Rey to reach out and feel the power of both the light and dark sides of the Force. Now, in this particular shot from the Last Jedi teaser, we see Rey's hand hovering over a book that has the former symbol of the Jedi Order, and many fans are starting to speculate that this book could be the Journal of the Wills. We don't know much about the Wills in the new Star Wars canon, but in Star Wars Legends, they were an ancient order of beings that were deeply connected with the Force, and the Journal of the Wills was a chronicled history of the galaxy and the Jedi. As for the new Star Wars canon, Shrewd Imwe and Baze Malbus used to be guardians of the Wills. They were also the guardians of the Kyber Temple on Jedha, and if you've seen Rogue One, rip Jedha. The Journal of the Wills book was made canon by Alan Dean Foster's novelization of The Force Awakens, which opens with this quote from the journal. It hasn't been confirmed, and it's probably not going to be confirmed until the movie, but if this is the Journal of the Wills, well, that's a direct tie-in to the Force Awakens novel. As for the quote, well, it essentially describes the problem and solution concerning the galaxy. The first 4 lines are about the continuous cycle of light and dark. The Jedi have power, then the Sith, then the Jedi return. Luke goes into exile. Now we have the rise of the First Order. Day, night, darkness, and light. It's a perpetual loop. The latter 4 lines are the solution. The difference, they say, is only made right by the resolving of gray through refined Jedi sight. Refined Jedi sight. Now, the word refined has 2 main definitions. With impurities and unwanted elements having been removed, developed or improved so as to be precise or subtle. In context, the second definition makes more sense than the first. Refined Jedi sight without impurities or unwanted elements sounds like the same old Jedi dogma, but an improved and developed Jedi philosophy is more in line with Luke's proclamation that the Jedi must end. For the most part, the Last Jedi will only have one Jedi, Luke. So Luke has to be the one with refined Jedi sight. Like Snoke says in The Force Awakens, Luke is the Last Jedi.
Leading them to the last Jedi. If Skywalker returns, the new Jedi will rise.
As we learned in The Force Awakens, the new Jedi tried to rise, but Kylo Ren was like, "Nah, I'm not having it, G. Sorry, Unc." Going into exile, Luke finds the first Jedi temple, where he may have also found the Journal of the Wills, which probably contains a detailed history of the Jedi Order. Even if Luke did not study the Journal of the Wills and the history of the Jedi, his own personal history is enough to cause a change of heart. The Jedi Code failed his father, Darth Vader. He witnessed a man who was once a great Jedi and a great warrior become a brutal dictator that bled the galaxy for 2 decades. His own teachings failed Kylo Ren, who slaughtered a new generation of Jedi. To be fair, Luke has seen a lot of up shit. The death of his aunt and uncle, the death of his father, now the death of his Jedi Padawans. He's now lived through 2 galactic civil wars And who is to blame is clear: the Sith and the Jedi, the two Force-based religions that have rotated absolute power. It really is a revolving door of absolute control. One is in power, then the other, then the other, then the other. It's always one or the other, but never both simultaneously. One would think that a true balance of the Force is an understanding of both the light and the dark sides, hence the line, resolving of gray. Resolving of gray. Now, there are basically three main definitions to the word resolving. Settle or find a solution to a problem, decide firmly on a course of action, and separate or cause to be separated into components. In context, I think the third definition makes the most sense: separate or cause to be separated. Separating the light and the dark leaves you with a better understanding of both, which was proven by Luke in Return of the Jedi. Whether it be full light or complete darkness, both are blinding, and I think Luke understands that the living Force is neither light or dark, good or bad, it just is. It's how one uses that power that truly matters. I also believe Luke when he says he wants the Jedi to end. I don't think it's just a throwaway line that they put in the trailer to get people interested in the movie. I think writer and director Rian Johnson is taking Star Wars to a place that it's really never been, and I welcome that change. I prefer morally complex characters. It makes the story more interesting when you don't know who you're rooting for. The good versus evil dynamic is fun, but when the story isn't black and white, when the characters are morally gray, it challenges your own personal moral compass. Nobody in the world is all evil or all good. There is moral complexity inside of every individual. And honestly, as of now, I've never been less concerned with Rey's parentage. I'm more interested in the bigger picture. What was Luke doing before The Force Awakens? Is he developing a philosophy that will transcend the Jedi? Will Rey become the first Gray Jedi? Well, looks like we solved the mystery of her name. But I really do hope she's Palpatine's granddaughter. Come on, look at those thrusts, man. It's just like old Palps. Palps? Palps! I want to hear what you guys have to say, so comment on this video. I love talking Star Wars theories. Star Wars is my favorite fantasy series. Yes, you heard it right. Star Wars over Game of Thrones. Wars before Thrones. And if you like this video, subscribe. And if you didn't like it, subscribe anyway, right? Who cares? Just turn off the notifications.